Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tech It to the Bank. My name is Stefanie Hammond. I am the head nerd here at Enable that's responsible for all things sales and marketing related. The goal of these individual coaching videos is to provide somewhat bite-sized sales and marketing advice, guidance that you can hopefully incorporate into your MSP that will possibly pay off with either new leads or new signed contract customers at the end of the day. We're in the middle of delivering a new multi-part training series, all focused on helping MSPs develop a marketing operating system for their MSP. I'm once again being joined by MSP marketing industry experts, Mark Copeman, Dave Sutton from Wingman. We're here to really talk about how to help MSPs simplify and demystify, the marketing struggles, the marketing challenges that they're having in finding new quality leads for their MSP, and then converting those leads into those signed contracts at the end. So very excited that you're here to join us today. Very excited to have Dave and Mark with me again today in this video series, really focusing on helping MSPs improve their marketing and sales know-how, so we can obviously help you improve your outcomes from your sales and marketing activities. So welcome, gentlemen, again. So in today's presentation, I'm just going to bring our puzzle pieces back up so everybody can see it. Where did it go? There we go. There we go. So today's episode, we are continuing that deep dive into each of the different jigsaw puzzle pieces. There's 8 that make up the MSP marketing operating system, and there's some ancillary pieces as well that we've talked about. But these are really kind of the 8 components, the elements that MSPs really need to focus on to help them gain real success and real traction, I think, when it comes to their marketing efforts. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the third puzzle piece, and that is all about how do you get yourself heard? How do you create stories about your successes so that you can grow awareness, build that trust for your MSP out in the marketplace. So Dave, Mark, I think Mark, you're going to be kicking it off this time. What does that whole concept of striving to be heard mean for MSPs today?
Yeah, and I'm going to pick up on the T word there, I think, Stephanie. It's one of my favorite words in all the work that we do. And, if anyone's ever heard me standing up on stage, if they remained awake long enough, they would have heard me talking about MSPs, first and foremost, are all about selling trust. And IT comes second. And I think this absolutely begins right at the very, very top of the funnel here. When people have stumbled across you, have been referred to you, whatever it may be, all that prospect wants to do is to de-risk the situation that they're about to put themselves into. They want to know that you are already doing that thing. It doesn't matter if you're in IT or in manufacturing or anything. It's the same across all industries. They want to know that whatever you are in theory going to be delivering for them as a potential customer, you are already doing it for others just like you. And that is where that building of trust begins. So the idea of being heard through stories, through social proof and so on, I think is one of the most important. We'll probably say this about all the bits of the jigsaws, to be honest with you, all the different pieces. But for me, it's one of the most important parts. And I think it's why it's so hard for startups to get going at times. If you don't have any customers, and we deal with MSPs who have just got going, they're perhaps just starting out on their own, or 2 or 3 folks have got together. And the question is always asked, how do you get that social proof together when you don't have any customers? And the answer to that is the chances are you've been in business elsewhere. I mean, if you are literally starting an MSP coming out of college, that's going to be a struggle. But if you've worked in previous companies, you've got feedback, you've got reviews, you can bend the truth a little bit by providing those recommendations and those reviews from other companies, I think. So that's a slightly unusual situation. But if you've been in business for 6 months or a year and you don't already have 1 or 2 or 3 case studies available to you, I genuinely believe you're missing a trick. And so creating those stories about how you've helped people to do a certain thing, how you've protected them, how you've kept them safe, how you've improved their productivity, how you've enabled them to be able to, grow into new markets or work remotely or whatever it may be, whatever the story is, harness it and tell it to as many people as you possibly can. There's tons of stuff in there, but that's my little intro to it. And I'm sure you'll have follow-up questions.
Dave, anything to add to that?
Yeah, the next piece I think to strengthen the trust is remembering that people still buy from people, and I think MSPs struggle particularly if you're a small MSP, is having personality, having faces of the business. And most, if you take a look at your top 5, 10, 15 competitors out there, chances are they have no pictures of their team on their website. So as a brand, they could be a one-man shop or they could be 100 people. You may have zero idea from looking at their website, looking at any of their marketing collateral. So I think focusing on that allows you to appear to be the appropriate size and personality to the target market that you wish to reach. If you want to be seen as a fun, quirky, approachable business that works with sort of startups and smaller SMBs, then that's the way you can come across in your imagery. If you're serving mid-market or maybe more white-collar professional services, then maybe you want to present yourself in that way. But a picture speaks 1,000 words. So having photos of your team, your office, even if you don't have an office, taking photos on a client's site, maybe, not just the techie stuff of someone's hands in a server rack or tidying cabling, but working with people, pictures of people together with a whiteboard or around a screen, pointing at things on a screen, and importantly, not stock photos. The reason why I spoke about the environment.
I'm waiting for Mark to his signature line in every training I've been a part of.
Which is banish the white-toothed people, of course.
Ding, ding, ding. Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. It's that creating that sense of personality and allowing the MSP's true personality to come through. But I think you do make a really good point there, Dave, around understanding, again, your target market. I always say that if I had $1 for every time I said ICP or ideal client profile or target market in a day, I could have retired probably 10 years ago. But again, it's understanding who it is that you want to attract, who do you want to do business with, and then making sure your website and all your messaging and everything that you're doing from outreach kind of communicates that personality or that target that you're trying to go after. For sure.
And there's a couple of things I think to think about there, both from jumping slightly ahead onto a future puzzle piece of your own personality, promoting perhaps yourself, maybe as the business owner or the person that leads sales within the organization, marketing yourself as a personality. So that whole personal brand piece, as well as the brand of the business is one factor to consider. But when you think of the multiple reasons as to why businesses switch MSP, that loss of trust and capability in the team that's lost through poor communication, but also importantly, I've won business back in my MSP days from people that became jaded with their incumbent when the go-to guy that they had a relationship with left the business, and all of a sudden that knowledge, that feeling of security that came with just that one person that happened to really know and understand their business. So if you think about, if you've got a team and you've got multiple people in your business, showcase not just yourself, but your wider team. What is the capability among the staff across your organization? And think about having, meet the team type posts on social media, for example. So you're being quite purposeful about communicating the wider folks you have within the organization, their years of experience. Think about their resume before they joined your MSP. What industries have they been in? What problems have they solved before? So you're boosting that wider capability and the personality piece of the whole organization, not just maybe you as the business owner.
Yeah. And we had talked about case studies briefly in the previous episode, but I think this is really the opportunity for MSPs to leverage the power of case studies, especially if you've been in business for a little while. Like everybody has those great clients in those great industries that they've done really good work with. But I don't see a lot of MSPs using case studies very much. So what would be the process to maybe if an MSP has never really done a case study before, what's your advice on how do they get started with it? Because I think there's a lot of power in case studies, but I just don't see MSPs using them.
Yeah, there's a huge amount around this, and it's something I'm personally very, very passionate about because I see it working every single day of the week for the reasons I mentioned at the beginning around de-risking the situation. So, how do you get started? Too many people say to us, "Oh, you know what? We've sort of tried, but no one wants to." But I actually genuinely disagree with that, and I think just asking and asking in the right way is a way of getting started with this. And let's remember, there are so many different mechanisms for getting that social proof, whether it be public reviews. Google reviews is certainly a type of testimonial in my book. It could be just a simple one sentence quote, which appears on a website. It could be, I guess it feels a bit more old school now, but a 2-pager PDF, for example. It could be video. There's so many different ways of demonstrating the story that you've created and the great work you've done for somebody else. So I think, first of all, figure out what it is you actually want. And when you're dealing with a customer who perhaps is time poor, which is probably most people, then you take the pain away. And first of all, you ask the question, would you leave a Google review? And if they leave the Google review, you can then grab that Google review and you can put it or take parts of it or whatever you want to do, and suddenly it's available on your website. For a customer that perhaps you've had a longer relationship with, for a couple of years and beyond, you have a really strong relationship and you've got a lot to talk about, then the other extreme is say, hey, look, any chance we could do that video testimonial, which is the most powerful type of proof, because anybody that's prepared to sit and talk and share that story on video obviously is incredibly delighted with what you are doing as an MSP. So how do you go about doing that? Well, you take the pain away. Again, you make it super easy. If you're going to send a film crew to be in situ, it's planned well in advance. You make sure it's set up in advance. You've got the right kind of room available, but that client is well briefed so that, I do this a lot, and I've sat behind cameras and I've sat in front of cameras many, many times. And I know that a lot of people get a bit wary. Less so after COVID, where everybody's used to cameras now, but people do still get wary. So make it easy for them. Give them the questions in advance. Even talk through some of the answers in advance if that person isn't particularly confident at speaking on the camera. And then, of course, shoot some B-roll around the office as well to make the most of it. But just take the pain away from that customer. So when people say, oh, I've asked, but it doesn't work, just ask in a different way. And I find that people are all too happy to help you out. If you're doing a good job, why wouldn't they? We do video testimonials with our clients because we practice what we preach. The alternative, by the way, just to finish off this little section, sending a film crew can be expensive or it can be difficult logistically, potentially. Use a service like this. We're using Riverside right now, or use Teams or Zoom. And record the interview remotely, and there's much, much less hassle for people. Quality is not necessarily as good, but you get 90% of the message. You can still deliver a really good asset off the back of it. So,
And I think there's
just
some
ask.
quirkiness if it's not, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think having the ultra professional look, I think sometimes takes away from the authenticity
Can do.
of it. I don't know. I think that's just maybe me. I think obviously we need both. But I think if someone's listening today and they're saying, oh, film crew, they're like, oh, I can never, I don't have the money to hire a film crew. But Riverside, Teams, we all have that.
Yep.
And then some basic video editing, and you got a testimonial there.
Absolutely.
Or a case study. And so perfect. Anything to add there, Dave, on that? I think Mark did a great job. But
Yeah, I think the sort of final element to this piece for me is building authority. Mark said people want to know that you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt in solving particular problems that they face. So think about, what are the top 5, 10 problems that you solve for your clients? If you're industry focused, or you've got that sort of ICP that's quite similar, maybe you look after white collar professional services firms. So, whether that's law firms or financial services, there's elements of regulation and complex processes and documentation and things that could apply to different but similar industries. If you're very broad and you're serving, a whole mixture of organizations, then try and find some common threads that every business would have, sort of onboarding, offboarding staff or new customers or those kinds of things, and talk about the business centric problems. That's what I'm trying to get to, is think about, who you serve, what problems you solve for them that are real commercial or operational issues that you solve through technology, and build your content around that, whether that is video and leveraging the case study. So you talk about really focused specific problems that clients have had, but ideally generalized enough that other potential customers are going to read those stories and think, oh yeah, that sounds like us. But that kind of content gives you the assets to strengthen your website, because it's sort of wording that you can use in the pages, but also as blogs or content that can feed video, social media, email campaigns. So when we think about those other marketing mediums you've got going on, don't just create a piece of content and use it once in one place, but feed lots of other activity from that. So build a voice of authority for your business around solving particular business challenges that your clients will resonate with, because most of them won't know or care about what the technical problems are, but they will care about the end goal that tech has helped them solve.
Absolutely. And I think I said this in a previous episode, but if they're on your website, if they found your website, they're on your website for a reason. So they're there because they have a problem. They have an issue. They're struggling with something that's just not getting resolved today by their existing MSP. And so you want to make sure that your website reflects, the problems or challenges that they're experiencing. So I think that's very, very great advice. Well, we did talk about at the beginning, like storytelling and testimonials to build trust with prospects. How can we use that to amplify an MSP's voice, that authority that we have been talking about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talked a lot about case studies, but on the storytelling side of things, I think whether it be stories to push out via customer newsletters for existing customers, or that nurture thing that we've been talking about, whether it's blog content, whatever it may be, frankly, even in face-to-face sales calls, you can use these things all over the place. But the concept of storytelling, which you've just mentioned there, and I think Dave and I are pretty passionate about this. We love all the AI stuff. We keep saying this. It's great because it's very, very helpful, but you have to use it in the right way. And if every business in the land is producing the same content, guess what? No one's going to pay a blind bit of attention to it. So the only thing which makes your business unique is your people and the stories that they've created over the years, whether you've been in business for 6 months or 30 years. There's a story there. There's a story about how you've worked with customers. There's anecdotes about things that have gone well. There's anecdotes about things that may have not gone so well, and that's okay too. So that is the only unique thing that you have, really, because all the IT stuff and how you do the things that you do is generally the same. So sure, you need to get those basics out there, but the storytelling element about how you've been helping people and the results that you've been getting for them is the only thing which is unique to you. And I would really, really encourage you to focus on that, to create those stories, to document the stories, I guess, because they'll be floating around the business. And as a great example, go and interview the owner. I could sit and interview Dave because he founded Wingman 4 years before I joined the business. So there's a whole load of stories he's got which I'm not party to. So one day I should probably sit him down and record them. I mean, we might need a few days, but that's okay. So, extract these stories. When somebody new comes into the business, get them to sit with the owner or some of the more experienced people and get those stories out of them. And then they can stand on a trade show booth or go and see a customer and talk through some of these things. So yeah, storytelling, super, super powerful.
Absolutely. And so again, yeah, we've talked about case studies. We've mentioned the newsletters. I think you briefly said PR, social. How can MSPs, or what are the best practices that you would give MSPs to help them grow a social media following? Because we do talk about, LinkedIn. Is there other platforms they should be on? What do you say from a social media standpoint on how to get yourself heard?
We mentioned one sort of concept of kind of meet the team type content where you're putting out sort of images of your team and some of their stories. But beyond that, I would focus on what else are you doing within the business. Again, storytelling, but thinking about taking that storytelling content and applying it in a social context, using images or using video to talk these things through. If you've got 2 or 3 projects a month, try and make it a rule that your team always snap a handful of photos on every project. And even social events that you've got going on, if you go bowling or you go out for beers or something, capture some of those pictures, because that kind of content is what gets way more engagement than anything else. People still engage with content that's got pictures of real people in, as opposed to branded sort of graphics, things like that. That there's nothing to draw them in. So focus on a different type of content strategy that is relevant in the social setting. Even LinkedIn, as probably the most important, still leverage those personal type photos. Anything you've got going on in the community, whether you engage with any non-profits or you sponsor a local kids football team or something, think about all of those types of engagements that you have that you could share on a calendar on a regular basis. A couple of things a week the business is putting out there to say, hey, we're out there doing this, or we've just spotted this problem. And one other area, sort of briefly touching upon PR that we've not sort of mentioned too much yet. This is a real challenge, I think, for MSPs to have sufficient content that is newsworthy enough that the local press will talk about. So try and build a relationship with a small cluster of journalists, perhaps in local press or in certain industry press materials of markets that you wish to serve, and try and provide commentary. Make it easy for them to come to you if a story happens, a local business suffers a cyber attack or something happens in a particular industry, and they're looking to comment on it, and they need people with expertise in cyber or IT or AI to talk about a particular event. Offer yourself as a commentator. So if it's Joe Blogs of ABC MSP has said blah blah blah, again, you get your name out there in another medium that hasn't cost you anything apart from a small amount of time, to become a voice of authority in the sort of wider community.
And the last thing I'll say is, if you want personality, check out the Wingman MSP Marketing LinkedIn page, because last month you will see both Dave and I dressed in sumo suits wrestling our employees. So there we go.
Right.
Got a whole load of engagement.
And we just had cat personalities as well. International Cat Day. Who knew that was even a thing?
It's a bit of fun. But hey, business can be fun. That is allowed.
It can be. And I think, if I am a business owner, I'm looking for a new service provider, I would want that, because I don't know a lot about technology. And yes, I want to make sure that the person or the company I'm going to engage with is obviously technologically smart, but that they also can bring a sense of humor, and that they're not above me, I think, as well. So I love those tips and tricks. So thank you, gentlemen, again, for helping crystallize for MSPs watching today what it means to be heard, the tasks and the activities that MSPs need to focus on to grow that awareness, whether it's case studies, newsletters, social, to how do you get out in the marketplace to build that trust with your audience and be that authority leader. In our next episode, we're going to be moving on to discuss the 4th jigsaw puzzle that makes up an MSP's marketing operating system, and that is how to be engaging. So how do you generate those warm leads via, different types of marketing campaigns, but more from an outbound perspective, those outbound telemarketing activities that are also needed to build a strong pipeline. We've talked about the passive. Now we need to be a little bit more active in terms of generating those leads. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Hope you can join us in our next installment of Building Your MSP's Operating System on Tech It to the Bank.